Hypixel Studios is hiring devs and designers for an automation and tinkering system, so now is a great time to share my ideas about Hytale's automation from the perspective of a redstone enthusiast and an engineering student. I've come up with 4 concepts. The first uses many of the real metals in Hytale for an electric/logic system. The second is a system with pulleys, gears, and magic. The third uses mob behaviors to automate activities, and the final takes advantage of a special aspect of the unused redesigned Scaraks. Before we go into the specifics of each, let's lay out the core features that any Hytale automation system needs to have no matter what. First and foremost is the ability to move blocks. This is a core aspect of Minecraft's redstone that allows for some of the coolest contraptions in the game. Flying machines, piston doors, walking houses, all of that cool stuff. I'm not saying that Hytale needs tech that enables those exact contraptions, although piston doors are definitely something that I would love to see, just that the fundamental ability to move blocks in some capacity needs to exist. Bonus points to the Hytale team if the system is done with something functionally different to a Minecraft piston, because obviously being a Minecraft copy is bad. As an extension of this idea, automation should also be able to change block states of anything with multiple states, such as doors and lamps, just to make sure that those are incorporated nicely into the system. Hytale's automation also needs a way to pick up items. This could be anything, from conveyor belts to chests to mobs to rail carts, and I don't even care if there's a way to automatically remove them from these containers afterwards. This will make auto farms of both mobs and plants much more feasible, since players won't need to walk by farms every couple minutes to prevent items from despawning, and since mobs will only spawn when previous mobs drops have been picked up. If you're against auto farming, that is okay, but since Simon specifically said that automation would be coming to Hytale, and the main things that players would want to automate in Hytale are farming and mining, I expect that auto farming is going to be a part of the system. If you don't like the idea of automatically getting resources, you have no obligation to use the system, and it's as simple as that. One last critical feature for automation is that there needs to be a way to prevent mobs from despawning. Right now, even passive mobs can despawn, and at the very least we should be able to farm stuff like sheep without them despawning on us. Name tagging in Minecraft is a perfect system in my opinion, although Hypixel will need to find a unique solution for Hytale to avoid being a Minecraft copycat. Now that we've got some base rules, let's talk a little about each of my concepts. The first concept is an electrical system, which is the most obvious choice of automation for a Hytale, albeit not a very creative one. Copper will be used to craft wires and generators, gold to craft more complex components like logic gates and flip-flops, iron will be used in lights and rails, cobalt has magnetic properties so it can be used in powered rail carts, generators, and wacky blocks with unique functionality such as item sorters that'll pull ores out of item streams or something like that. And finally, thorium can be used as fuel in power generation, similar to how it's used in nuclear fission in real life. A huge benefit of this idea is that it could give a use to every single ore metal that isn't a top tier of gear. Generally, electronics would work like real life, with motors to push and pull blocks or open doors, and motorized rail carts to carry and deposit items. There's also the possibility of adding stuff like video screens, fancy farming equipment, and anything else that the Hypixel team could dream of. The glaring issue with electricity is that fundamentally it doesn't really fit with the Hytale art style or the Hytale setting, and that makes it kind of boring within the game. On the other hand, a pulley and magic system would work perfectly with Hytale's setting. This system would be integrated into Orbis, and I imagine the first time players experience it will be in a Quebec village, where the Quebecs use pulleys and the ropes that are already in the game for many purposes, such as moving items or bringing waters from the stream up to the treetops. The player would be introduced to other parts of the system through other factions and dungeons within Orbis. The goblins, for example, would have the technology to move blocks and would have cool doors within their lairs. The Outlanders have water wheels to provide automatic power to mills, whereas all of the other factions need to manually power their mechanisms. The Chorks could have gears, which I imagine that they would use for the explicit purpose of rotating meat over a campfire to get a more even cook, and for literally nothing else. And other factions would all have their own features too. As the player, you'll gather all of these technologies together and be able to combine them to create things that none of the other factions could have dreamed of. The final frontier would be a steampunk technology developed from blueprints found in the depths of crazy labyrinth-like dungeons, with steam generators powered by magic essences and complex components like magical farm equipment and defense turrets crafted with and powered by essences too. Depending on the direction Hypixel want to take magic, they could make it more or less involved in automation, but using factions to introduce tech to players would be great for encouraging exploration and yield a gradual increase in technical complexity to make learning systems easier, plus it would make automation feel like a core part of the game rather than a system that is tacked on as an afterthought. The third automation concept I have cuts out the middleman and just straight up uses mobs to do your work. Quebecs manage your farms for you, Torques can move blocks at your command, Farons collect items off the ground and place them in the nearest chest, and Goblins can be ordered to mine out areas. Hytale would be best served framing this as paid work rather than outright slavery, as obviously that's not very good for the game's public image. So, in exchange for their services, you would give Torques stuff like meat and goblins, pickaxes, gold and food, Farons protection from the Scaraks, and so on. In a perfect world, Hypixel would make rail carts serve their proper purpose of carrying ore, so material could be mined and put into a cart by a goblin, the cart could be pushed to the surface by a Torque, and unloaded at the top by a Faron, making a satisfyingly intertwined system. It could even be possible to set it up so that the factions meet each other's employment conditions, making full autonomy a possibility. This would play well into the faction reputation system, if that is ever brought back to Hytale, which at this point, who knows, as it would give a reason for players to keep in the faction's good graces. Having mobs around would be convenient if NPC adventure parties are ever implemented for players who want to be on a team without connecting to the internet. The biggest cons with this concept are that it would be a huge pain to brainstorm enough ideas, and an even huger pain to program this with Hytale's current AI systems, so this likely won't make the cut. My final idea is based off a faction that isn't even in Hytale right now, the redesigned Scaraks. Simon said that they will eventually be added to the game, and what better way to do it than with a complete automation system. The whole system is based off of one single line from an old blog post. They communicate efficiently using light and gesture. The light part is interesting, because with light you can send and receive signals. Using drops from this new faction, along with metals and other resources, players would craft converters, magnifiers, reflectors, absorbers, and more components. When you place a light source behind a converter, it will be converted into a bluish light beam which travels straight out of the converter and slowly loses power. When it collides with a magnifier, it will gain power. When it collides with a reflector, the beam will be redirected in the direction of the reflector as if it hit a mirror, and when it collides with an absorber, the absorber will absorb the light beam and then change the block state of any of the blocks directly touching it, including lights. These beams would be unable to pass through entities, making a great entity detector, as walking across it would cut the beam, and would hopefully morph into a very exciting system once players get their hands on it. One note is that this would require blocks with unique functionalities to interact with Scarak light, which could make the system feel disjointed, but also offers an opportunity for the devs to take underused items that they want to give uses to, and give them a fitting contraption block to encourage gathering them. Simon specifically said that they are exploring physics-driven systems, which I have ignored in my brainstorming. Technically, electricity and light are both physics, but since his explanation includes physical parts, pulleys, belts, gears, shafts, and motion, I assume that he means physically driven. The reason that I chose to ignore this is that, for one, him saying motion is a little odd since Hytale currently lacks the ability to have moving structures, may or may not be able to support moving blocks smoothly, and only has a few rideable entities which are very bugged, and two, he says that he wants logic, which is a lot harder to implement into a mechanical system than it is to implement into a pseudo-electrical one. Add on top of it that development of the system has barely begun, so it is definitely not locked into any particular style, even if Simon already has something specific in mind. After all, Simon will not be the core developer working on this system. Automation features are probably quite far away from Hytale still, but it is awesome to see action being taken to bring them to the game so soon after release. I have faith that the team will come up with a great system that will be way better than anything that I could think of. Simon, if you are seeing this, hit me up. I'd love to be involved with the project, and if you ever want somebody to make video guides for your automation, I've got you. To everybody else watching, I'd love to hear how you'd implement automation into Hytale, and if you have any critiques or anything to add, to my ideas, please put them in the comments or on X. Hypixel have a great track record of reading and considering the community's ideas. Who knows, if your idea is good enough, they may have a spot on their dev team for you to fill. Thank you all so much for watching, and until my next video, stay hypey!